My name is Evelyn. I am 78 years old, and I have lived long enough to know that betrayal doesn't always come from strangers. It often comes from the people who sit at your table and call you family. I thought I had seen everything in life. Wars, famine, losing my husband, raising my children with nothing but grit. But nothing prepared me for the night my own daughter-in-law set my room on fire. The flames licked the wooden walls like hungry beasts. Smoke curled through the ceiling, dark and heavy, choking the air I tried desperately to breathe. My chest ached. My eyes burned. My heart pounded as I crawled toward the window, clutching the old rosary that had hung by my bedside for decades. I could hear her voice outside the door, calm, rehearsed, almost relieved, saying, "It's quicker this way. No more waiting around." My bed was already engulfed in fire. The curtains disintegrated into floating ash. My knees trembled as I reached for the floorboard under my dresser, the one place no one knew about. My late husband and I had built a hidden safe beneath it, a safe that contained not only money but documents, deeds, and letters no flame should ever erase. My trembling fingers brushed the edge of the wood. The heat pressed against my back like a devil's hand urging me to give up. I coughed until I thought my lungs would burst. The world tilted. My skin felt like it was sizzling. And then, just when I thought the smoke would claim me, the safe clicked open beneath my hand. My eyes widened, and for the first time in that chaos, I felt a surge of life. Because what was inside that safe was going to destroy her lies forever. But before I could pull it free, the floor beneath me groaned, and the flames roared higher. The sound of boots running outside the door made my heart seize. Was it help? Or was it her, returning to make sure I didn't survive? And that was the night everything changed. The night my daughter-in-law tried to erase me, but she didn't know the fire would reveal more than it consumed. Now let me take you back to the beginning. Let me tell you how I, a 78-year-old widow, ended up trapped in my own burning room while the woman who had married my son smiled in the dark. When I first welcomed her into our family, I thought she was a blessing. She was young, polite, and carried herself with grace. My son beamed whenever she walked into a room. I thought she was going to be the daughter I never had. But slowly things began to change. At first, it was the little things, her sighs when I asked for help with groceries, the way she rolled her eyes when I told stories from the past, the way she nudged my son to choose her side in every small disagreement. I told myself it was just the adjustment of living under one roof. But deep down I knew, respect was fading. Have you ever ignored the first warning signs of betrayal, thinking love will fix it? That was me. I brushed it off, until the day she made my son choose between me and her in the cruelest way possible. But I'll get to that. Because the truth is, betrayal doesn't happen all at once. It builds like smoke before the flame. And by the time you notice, it's too late. What would you do if the very person who promised to be family started plotting against you right under your roof? Would you confront them immediately? Or would you wait for proof? Stay with me because in the next chapter I will take you to the moment it all began. The first crack in our family bond, the one I should never have ignored. If this story shocked you, tell me. What would you have done if your daughter-in-law started showing disrespect under your roof? Would you keep quiet for peace, or speak out? Comment your thoughts, subscribe, and don't miss the next chapter. When you have lived for nearly 8 decades, you learn to swallow small insults. You learn that not every roll of the eyes is worth a confrontation. Not every careless word deserves your peace. I had survived far greater storms in life than a young woman's disrespect. That's what I told myself when Angela, my daughter-in-law, began showing her true colors. Angela was 26 when she married my son, Daniel. He adored her. To him, she was everything he had ever dreamed of. Beautiful, educated, charming in public. I will not deny she had a kind of glow when she first came into our lives. She laughed at my son's jokes. She held his hand at the dinner table. She called me Mama Evelyn with a sweet, practiced smile that could have fooled anyone. And for a time it fooled me. I still remember the first Sunday dinner after their wedding. I had made Daniel's favorite, okra soup with smoked fish and soft fufu. He had always been my picky child, the one who never finished his plate unless it was made with love. When Angela took her first spoonful, her face tightened. She placed the spoon down gently, and with a smile that didn't reach her eyes, she said, "Thank you, Mama Evelyn, but I don't usually eat heavy foods. I'll just stick with salad." Daniel laughed it off, but in that moment something inside me stirred. My food had been good enough for him all his life, but suddenly in his wife's presence, it seemed like a burden. I told myself not to take it personally. After all, every family has its adjustments. But the truth. That was the first time I felt pushed aside at my own table. Do you know that feeling when you're no longer the center of your child's world, but an obstacle? That quiet ache that tells you love is being redirected. That was the beginning. Weeks passed, and Angela's subtle dismissals grew bolder. She would sigh loudly whenever I asked Daniel to help me with errands. "Why can't we just order online?" she would mutter, almost under her breath, but loud enough for me to hear. When I tried to tell her stories from Daniel's childhood, the kind mothers cherish sharing, she would glance at her phone, scrolling endlessly, not even pretending to listen. The worst part. My son noticed but said nothing. Silence, I have learned, can be more painful than insults. One afternoon, as I folded Daniel's old shirts in the laundry room, I overheard them speaking in the living room. "She's old, Daniel," Angela whispered. "You baby her too much. At her age, she should be in a home, not living here. Don't you want your freedom?" My heart clenched. My hands froze on the shirt I was folding. Freedom. What had I become? A chain around my son's neck. Daniel sighed heavily. "Angela, she's my mother. She has nowhere else to go. I can't just throw her out." Her voice was sharper then. "It's not throwing her out, it's giving us peace. We could have this house to ourselves. We could build our own life without her always here, always watching. Don't you think about the future?" I pressed my hand over my mouth to stifle a sob. That was the first time I realized. She didn't see me as family. She saw me as a burden. Have you ever overheard someone you trusted speak about you as though you were disposable? It pierces deeper than any knife. That night, I cried silently into my pillow. I prayed, asking God for strength. I told myself Daniel would never choose her over me. Not after everything we had survived together. After his father died, it was just the two of us for years. I had sold my jewelry, worked double shifts at the hospital, and even rented out half our home just to afford his education. Every drop of sweat I shed was for him. Surely he would remember that. Surely he would not abandon me. But people forget. Love fades when others whisper in their ear long enough. The first real confrontation happened a month later. I had gone to the market and bought fresh yam, eager to make porridge for dinner. Cooking to me was love expressed. But when I walked into the kitchen, Angela stood there, hands on her hips, glaring at the pot on the stove. "Mama Evelyn," she said sharply, "why are you always cooking these heavy meals? Daniel doesn't even like this anymore. You're wasting food." Her tone cut like glass. I blinked stunned. Wasting food. This is what he grew up on. He has always loved yam porridge. He smirked. "Well, things change. People change. Maybe it's time you accept that." Daniel walked in just then. I turned to him, waiting for him to defend me. Waiting for him to say, "No, Mama, I still love your food." But he only scratched his head awkwardly and muttered, "Angela, leave it. It's not that deep." Not that deep. Those words stayed with me long after dinner ended. I realized then that Angela's grip on him was tightening. Every sigh, every complaint, every whispered word was drawing him further away from me. And the more I resisted, the more isolated I became. But here's the thing about age. We notice what younger eyes miss. I began to see something else in her behavior. Not just dislike, but calculation. She wasn't just pushing me away emotionally. She was studying me, watching me, waiting. Why? That question haunted me. Then came the incident with the money. I had a small wooden box where I kept my savings. Years of pension money tucked carefully away. It wasn't much, but it was mine, my safety net. One morning I opened it and found it lighter. Counted quickly. $50 gone. My heart raced. I searched the house, convinced I had misplaced it. But deep down I knew I hadn't. When I confronted Angela, her eyes widened with mock innocence. "Are you accusing me, Mama Evelyn? How dare you? Maybe you forgot. You're old, you forget things." Well, that word burned hotter than any flame. Daniel, instead of investigating, shook his head. "Mama, please don't start. Just $50. Let's not make this a fight. Just $50. My son's voice was tired, as though my pain was an inconvenience. That was the moment I realized how far I had fallen in his eyes. And that was also when I decided never to keep all my savings in plain sight again. That was when I moved most of it into the hidden safe beneath my floorboard, the safe that years later would survive the fire. Angela thought she was clever. She thought her whispers and her little thefts went unnoticed. But I saw everything. And though I stayed quiet, I began to prepare. Because when people show you who they are, you must believe them. The real breaking point came on my birthday. I turned 78, and all I wanted was a small dinner with family. I baked my own cake, slow and careful, humming the same hymn I had sung for years. When the time came, Daniel was distracted on his phone, Angela scrolling beside him. They didn't even sing. Halfway through the meal, Angela suddenly said, "Daniel, we should really consider moving. A bigger house, maybe closer to the city. Somewhere, just us." Her eyes slid toward me, sharp as knives. The message was clear. Daniel looked down at his plate, silent. "Put my fork down. If you want me gone, Angela, say it to my face." The room went still. He smirked. "You said it yourself." Daniel slammed his fork down. "Enough. Both of you. I can't do this." He stormed off, leaving me with her smirk lingering in the silence. That night, as I sat alone in my room, I realized something terrifying. Angela wasn't just trying to push me out. She was planning something bigger. Something final. And I was right. Because only weeks later, the night would come when smoke would fill my lungs, fire would swallow my bed, and Angela's voice outside my door would whisper, "It's quicker this way." But how did it escalate to fire? That is what I'll tell you next. Because betrayal doesn't always stop at words. It burns until there's nothing left. If you were in my place, hearing your daughter-in-law whisper about sending you away, what would you do? Would you confront her or stay silent and watch? Share your thoughts, and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss the next chapter of this story. When you live under the same roof with someone who secretly despises you, every small sound becomes a warning. Every closed door feels like a wall against you. I began to notice Angela's movements more carefully after my birthday. The smirk she gave me when Daniel left the room haunted me. It was the look of someone who believed she had already won. I told myself I had survived worse in life, but something about this woman chilled me. She wasn't simply disrespectful. She was dangerous. At first, I thought I was imagining things. The way she lingered near my room when she thought I was asleep. The way objects went missing, small at first. My comb, a handkerchief, a scarf. Then bigger things. The old photo album of Daniel's childhood disappeared one afternoon, never to be seen again. When I asked her, she shrugged. "Maybe you misplaced it, Mama Evelyn. You forget a lot these days." That word again, forget. It became her weapon. Her way of painting me as senile, unreliable, someone who couldn't be trusted. And Daniel, my sweet Daniel, began to believe her. One evening I called him into my room. I held his hand and looked him in the eye. "Son, do you still trust me?" He hesitated, and that hesitation cut deeper than any answer. "Mama," he sighed, "Angela just wants peace. You two are always clashing. Maybe you should try to get along with her." "Get along?" My voice shook. "Daniel, she wants me gone." He pulled his hand away. "She's my wife. Can you at least respect that?" Respect. That word tasted bitter. Had I not given up everything to raise him? Had I not sold my wedding ring, my heirlooms, to put him through school? And now I was the one who needed to prove respect. I swallowed my pride. But that night I cried into my pillow until it was wet. The next morning, I woke up to find the kitchen strangely silent. Angela stood at the counter, her back to me, humming softly. A knife gleamed in her hand as she chopped vegetables. But when she turned and saw me, her smile didn't reach her eyes. "Good morning, Mama Evelyn," she said sweetly. "Did you sleep well?" I nodded slowly, though my chest tightened. Something about the way she asked felt rehearsed, insincere. That week, Daniel worked late shifts. Angela and I were left alone in the house more often. And that's when the small accidents began. One afternoon, I was pouring hot tea when suddenly the chair I usually sat on collapsed beneath me. I had sat on that chair for years. Its legs had been sturdy. But when I examined it, I saw the screws had been loosened. My hand shook as I touched the bolts. Someone had tampered with it. I looked toward the doorway. Angela was standing there, arms crossed, watching me with a small smile. "Careful, Mama," she said softly. "You could have hurt yourself." Her voice lingered in the air long after she left the kitchen. "Do you see the pattern? When someone wants you gone, they don't always strike directly. They weaken you first. They make you doubt your own balance, your own strength. They make others think you're just old and clumsy." Days later, I found bleach poured across my laundry. My dresses, my scarves, even my bedsheets, ruined. I confronted her. "Angela, did you do this?" She raised her eyebrows, feigning shock. "Me? Why would I waste bleach on your clothes? Maybe you spilled it yourself." Her lies were wrapped in innocence, but her eyes gave her away. That evening I told Daniel. But instead of standing up for me, he sighed. "Mama, maybe you shouldn't do laundry alone anymore. You forget things." Angela wouldn't do that. Forget. Always forget. She was poisoning him against me little by little, until my son saw me not as his mother, but as a burden. The real test came one cold evening. I woke in the middle of the night, throat dry, and decided to go to the kitchen for water. As I walked past the living room, I froze. Angela was there, sitting in the dark, staring at the fireplace. A small smile played on her lips, and in her hand was a box of matches. My heart skipped. She didn't see me at first, and I watched her strike one match, blow it out, then strike another. Over and over. The firelight flickered across her face, casting shadows that made her look almost unrecognizable. Finally, she noticed me. Her smile widened. "Oh, Mama, you startled me. I couldn't sleep, so I came here to relax." Relax. With matches in her hand. I backed away slowly, muttering something about needing water. But my chest was tight, my hands trembling. For the first time, I wondered if she was planning something darker than just pushing me out. The thought of fire stayed with me. I began to notice how often she lingered near the stove, how her eyes seemed to follow flames whenever candles burned during power outages. It wasn't just dislike. It was obsession. Do you believe in intuition? That quiet voice inside you that screams when danger is near. Mine was screaming louder every day. I started keeping a bucket of water near my bed. I checked the locks twice before sleeping. And most importantly, I double-checked the floorboard where the hidden safe was. My husband had built it years ago after a robbery in our neighborhood. Inside were all the important things. The deed to the house, my pension papers, savings in cash, and letters from him that I couldn't bear to lose. If anything ever happened, that safe was my last protection. Angela didn't know about it. At least I prayed she didn't. Then came the day Daniel traveled for work. He would be gone for 2 nights. I begged him not to leave me alone with her, but he laughed. "Mama, stop worrying. Angela will take care of you." Take care of me. The words sent chills down my spine. That evening, as I sat in my room, I heard Angela outside in the hallway, speaking on the phone. Her voice was low, but I caught fragments. "She's old anyway. Takes too much time. Quicker this way. Quicker this way." My heart pounded in my chest. I pressed my ear against the door, straining to hear more, but she moved away. I didn't sleep that night. I sat upright in bed, clutching my rosary, whispering prayers into the dark. The next day, she was unusually cheerful. Too cheerful. She made me tea and smiled as she handed it over. I stared at the cup, suspicious. Was this another attempt? I pretended to sip but poured it down the sink when she wasn't looking. Her eyes followed me all day, calm but calculating. I could feel it in my bones. Something was coming. And I was right. Because that night the fire began. I woke to the sharp crackle of flames, to the smell of smoke thick in my throat. My bed was burning. My curtains were aflame. I stumbled up, coughing, eyes watering. Through the haze, I heard her voice outside my door. "It's quicker this way." And that was the moment I knew. My daughter-in-law wasn't just trying to push me out. She wanted me gone for good. What would you do if you discovered your daughter-in-law secretly plotting against you, and no one believed you? Not even your own son. Would you run? Would you fight back? Comment your thoughts, subscribe, and stay with me for the next chapter. You won't believe what happened when the fire spread. The night my room caught fire is carved into my bones. I will never forget the way the flames roared like a wild beast, the way smoke clawed at my lungs, or the sound of Angela's voice just beyond the door. Steady, calm, almost satisfied. "It's quicker this way." Those words weren't screamed in panic. They weren't cries for help. They were deliberate, cold. And they froze my blood faster than the fire could scorch me. I leapt from the burning bed, coughing, my nightgown clinging to me with sweat and smoke. Heat pressed against me from all sides, the walls glowing orange. The ceiling creaked like it was about to collapse. My legs trembled, but I forced them forward, toward the corner of the room where my husband's greatest secret lay hidden, the safe beneath the floorboard. I had no time to think, no time to weigh options. Instinct guided me. The safe wasn't just about money or deeds. It was about survival. It was proof. Proof that everything I had worked for, everything Angela wanted to erase, still existed. The floor burned hot beneath my feet as I yanked the small rug aside and clawed at the wooden plank. My old fingers trembled, slipping on the edges, but by some miracle, the wood gave way, and there it was, the steel mouth of the safe. My chest tightened with smoke, but my soul surged with hope. I pressed the code with shaking hands. Click. Pin. Inside, wrapped in cloth, lay the documents. The deed to the house, my pension records, insurance papers, and bundles of cash I had tucked away for years. My legacy. My shield. But just as I reached inside, the door rattled violently. Angela's voice cut through the smoke. "Mama Evelyn." Her tone was honeyed, but I heard the venom underneath. "Are you awake?" Oh no, the fire. Her act. Her performance. She wanted me to answer, to reveal I was still alive. But I stayed silent, crouched low by the safe, clutching the papers against my chest. Then the door creaked open. Through the smoke, I saw her silhouette, a slim figure, arms folded, head tilted as she looked at the inferno she had sparked. For a moment our eyes locked. Her lips curved into a faint smile. She didn't rush in to save me. She didn't scream for help. She just stood there, watching the flames consume my world. Have you ever seen evil up close? Not in stories, not in movies, but in the calm face of someone you welcomed into your family. That was Angela. My knees gave way and I stumbled, choking. She turned as if to walk away. And that was when anger stronger than fear surged through me. "No," I croaked, though my throat felt like sandpaper. "I will not die in my own home." I dragged myself toward the window, clutching the documents against me. The smoke blinded me, the fire licked at my legs, but I pushed forward. My husband's rosary swung from my neck, burning hot against my chest. With the last of my strength, I slammed my elbow against the windowpane. Glass shattered, cutting into my arm. Cool night air rushed in, a cruel contrast to the furnace behind me. I heaved myself up, every bone screaming in protest, and thrust the papers through the opening. And then my foot slipped. My body tilted backward into the flames. Strong hands grabbed me from behind. For a heartbeat, I thought it was Angela, dragging me back into the fire. But the grip was firm, urgent, pulling me upward. Through the haze, I saw a neighbor's face, Mr. Harris, who had smelled the smoke and rushed over. "Hold on, Evelyn," he shouted. His voice cut through the chaos like a lifeline. He pulled me through the window, just as the ceiling of my room collapsed inward with a thunderous roar. The fire swallowed everything behind me. Everything except the safe, hidden beneath the floor, untouched. I collapsed onto the grass outside, gasping, clutching the bundle of documents to my chest. My skin was scorched, my nightgown singed, but I was alive. Angela ran out then, pretending to scream, pretending to panic. "Oh my God! Mama Evelyn! What happened?" Her eyes darted to the bundle in my arms, then to the burning house. For the first time I saw fear flash across her face. Not fear for me, but fear of what had survived. Because she knew in that moment her plan had failed. The sirens wailed in the distance. Neighbors gathered, whispering, pointing. Some gave me blankets, others called for water. But Angela lingered on the porch, pale, shaking, her lies forming faster than the flames spread. "She must have left a candle burning," she muttered to the crowd. "I always tell her to be careful." The neighbors looked at her strangely. Some nodded, some frowned. I wanted to shout the truth. I wanted to expose her right there, but my lungs were raw, my voice too weak. I could only sit, trembling, as the fire consumed the house and Angela's false tears fell into the night. But deep inside I knew this. She had underestimated me. Had survived. The safe had survived. And soon, her lies would burn brighter than the fire she had lit. Because I wasn't just holding papers in my arms. I was holding the weapon that would bring her down. Imagine surviving a fire set by your own family. What would you do first? Run to the police or stay quiet and plan your revenge? Share your thoughts in the comments and don't forget to subscribe. The next chapter will reveal what Angela did the morning after the fire, and why she feared the safe more than she feared me. The morning after the fire, I woke in the hospital with an oxygen mask pressed against my face. My body ached as though I had been beaten. My throat burned, my skin felt raw, but my spirit had never been sharper. 'Cause I remembered everything. The nurses fussed over me, checking my breathing, whispering about how lucky I was to have escaped alive. "At her age," one of them said softly, "it's a miracle she made it out." But I knew it wasn't just luck. It was survival. It was purpose. Because not only had I lived, but the safe had lived too. And that meant Angela hadn't won. When Daniel rushed into the room later that morning, his eyes wide and red with worry, I almost broke down. He held my hand, kissed my forehead and whispered, "Mama, thank God you're alive." But behind him stood Angela, her face pale, her arms folded tightly across her chest. She didn't come close. She didn't hold me. Instead, she forced a weak smile and said, "We were so scared. The fire must have started from your candles again. I kept telling you. Candles again." She was already planting the story. I pulled the oxygen mask aside. My voice was raspy but firm. "I don't keep candles lit at night." Daniel frowned, looking between us. Angela's smile didn't falter. "She forgets, Daniel. She's been tired lately. The doctor even said memory loss can happen at her age." I wanted to scream, to tell my son that his wife had tried to murder me. But one look at his weary face told me the truth. He wasn't ready to hear it. Not yet. He loved her too deeply, believed her too blindly. If I accused her then, he would think I was delusional. So I stayed silent. For now. Because sometimes silence is not weakness. Sometimes silence is strategy. That night, after Daniel went home, I clutched the bundle of documents that had been saved from the fire. Mr. Harris, my neighbor, had picked them up from the grass outside and handed them to the paramedics. They lay now in a sealed envelope by my bedside, untouched. I opened it carefully, running my fingers over the crisp papers. The deed to the house, the pension funds, savings bonds, insurance, letters from my husband. Proof that I was not powerless. Proof that Angela couldn't erase me. I held the deed to the house longest. The house was mine. Not Daniel's, not Angela's. My late husband had made sure of it. And I realized then why Angela wanted me gone. With me out of the way, she and Daniel would claim everything. But she hadn't expected the safe to survive. She hadn't expected me to survive. The next morning, Angela came to the hospital alone. She brought flowers, her face painted with fake sweetness. "Mama Evelyn," she said softly, setting the bouquet down. "I know we've had our differences, but I want us to move forward. Life is short, and yesterday proved that." I looked at her, my eyes steady. "Yes, life is short. But fire doesn't always destroy. Sometimes it reveals." For a second her smile faltered. She knew. She knew I suspected. She leaned closer, her voice barely a whisper. "You should be careful with your words, Mama. People might think you're confused after the fire." Her threat was subtle, but it chilled me more than the flames had. I smiled back, weak but deliberate. "And you should be careful with your lies. They catch fire faster than wood." Her eyes narrowed. She stood abruptly, straightened her coat, and left without another word. That night I couldn't sleep. My mind raced. Angela would not stop. She would try again in some other way. But I had something she didn't expect: proof. The question was, how to use it. I thought of going straight to the police. But what evidence did I have that she had lit the fire? My word against hers. And with Daniel defending her, they would dismiss me as a paranoid old woman. No, I needed to be smarter. I needed her to expose herself. So I began to plan. Quietly. Carefully. When Daniel visited again the next day, I asked him casually, "What will happen to the house now?" He looked confused. "What do you mean, Mama? The house is still ours." I shook my head. "No, the house is mine. The deed is in my name." Angela froze in the corner of the room. Her eyes widened just slightly, but Daniel didn't notice. He smiled at me, squeezing my hand. "Mama, don't worry about paperwork. Just rest." But I saw the flicker of panic in Angela's face. For the first time, she understood that I held the power, not her. And that power made her desperate. That night back at home, I imagined she lay awake, wondering how much I truly remembered, how much I had saved. Because when people are desperate, they make mistakes. And I was going to be watching for hers. Do you know the strange thing about surviving something like fire? Doesn't make you weaker. Makes you sharper. Burns away your fear. I wasn't the fragile old woman she thought I was anymore. I was a woman who had looked death in the eye and crawled back. And I was ready to fight. But I wasn't ready for what she tried next. Because if fire didn't work, Angela had another weapon: Daniel. She began whispering to him, twisting his heart against me, playing the victim in ways I hadn't imagined. And within days, Daniel came to my hospital bed with words that broke me more than the flames had. "Mama," he said softly, "maybe it's time you considered moving into assisted living. Angela and I think it would be best for you." The betrayal hit me like a second fire. My own son repeating her plan. If your child asked you to leave your own home after you nearly died, what would you do? Fight back immediately or wait for the right moment? Comment your thoughts below, subscribe, and don't miss the next chapter. The game was no longer about survival. It was about war. The words echoed in my ears long after Daniel left my hospital room. Maybe it's time you considered moving into assisted living. Angela and I think it would be best for you. Assisted living. As if I were some fragile piece of furniture to be stored away when inconvenient. As if I hadn't built the very home he and his wife now lived in. As if 78 years of sacrifice could be erased by a few whispered lies. That night, as I lay under the thin hospital blanket, I made a vow. They would not put me in a home. They would not strip me of dignity or property, or the life my husband and I had built. If Angela thought the fire was the end of me, she was wrong. It was the beginning. I pressed the rosary against my chest, whispering a prayer. God, give me wisdom, not just strength. Let me see my enemies' steps before they take them. And he did. When I was discharged a few days later, Daniel drove me home. Angela sat beside him in the car, her perfume heavy, her eyes hidden behind dark sunglasses. She didn't look at me, not once, during the ride. But I could feel the tension rolling off her like heat. The house smelled of ash and smoke. My room was destroyed, but the safe, oh, the safe, remained untouched beneath the floor. While they busied themselves showing me the repairs, they claimed they would start soon. I waited until they left for groceries. Then, with trembling hands, I went to the hidden compartment. I pulled the documents out again, laying them carefully on the bed in the guest room where I now slept. The deed gleamed up at me, my name bold and undeniable. Evelyn, owner of the house. Not Daniel. Not Angela. Me. That was my shield, and I needed to protect it. I wrapped the papers in plastic, tucked them into a new hiding place beneath my mattress, and kept only a small decoy folder in the safe. If Angela ever discovered it, she'd find nothing but old letters and expired bills. The real proof was with me. Always. Still, I knew I needed more than papers. I needed allies. The next Sunday, when Daniel and Angela left for church, I slipped out quietly to visit an old friend, Mr. Harris, the neighbor who had pulled me from the flames. He welcomed me in with kind eyes and strong hands. "Evelyn," he said, shaking his head, "you're lucky to be alive. That fire, it spread too fast. Too clean. Something about it didn't sit right with me." I leaned forward, lowering my voice. "It wasn't an accident, Harris." Angela said it. His eyes widened. "Are you certain?" "As certain as I am breathing," I whispered. "But Daniel doesn't believe me." "No one does. I need help." Harris nodded slowly. "Then you need proof. More than your word. More than suspicion." He was right. Angela was clever, always painting herself as the victim. If I accused her without evidence, Daniel would only turn further against me. That night, lying awake in the guest room, I began forming my plan. Quiet moves. Small steps. Nothing obvious. First, I called an old lawyer friend, Mr. Cole, who had handled my husband's affairs years ago. His voice on the phone was warm, steady. "Evelyn, of course I remember you. Come by my office. Bring everything you have." 2 days later, while Daniel was at work and Angela was out shopping, I slipped into a taxi and went downtown. I carried the bundle of documents in a plain bag, my heart pounding all the way. Mr. Cole spread the papers across his desk, adjusting his glasses. "This is strong, Evelyn. The house deed is in your name. Your savings are untouched, your pension is secured. They can't force you out legally, not without your consent." I exhaled, relief washing over me. But then his eyes narrowed. "Unless, of course, they try something drastic. Power of attorney, fake signatures, fraud. You must be careful." Fraud. The word made me shiver. Because Angela was capable of it. "Protect these," he advised, handing me copies. "And if anything happens again, you come straight to me." I clutched the papers to my chest, thanking him. I walked out taller than I had walked in. For the first time in months, I felt like I had armor. But Angela was not blind. She noticed the shift in me when I returned home that evening. She tilted her head, studying me, her smile thin. "You seem different, Mama," she said softly. "Stronger." I met her gaze without flinching. Surviving fire changes a person. Her lips pressed into a hard line. She knew something had shifted, but she didn't know what. And that made her uneasy. The days that followed were tense. Angela grew bolder in her whispers to Daniel. I overheard them arguing one night. "She can't stay here forever, Daniel," Angela hissed. "We need to move forward. I can't live like this, with her watching us, judging us." "She's my mother," Daniel said, his voice tired. "She's dead weight," Angela spat. I pressed my hand against the wall between our rooms, my heart breaking. But I didn't cry. Not anymore. Tears were wasted on people who saw you as disposable. Instead, I waited. I watched. And I planned. One evening, Angela entered my room while I pretended to sleep. I kept my eyes barely open, watching her silhouette move quietly around the space. She crouched near the floorboard, near the safe. Her fingers searched, tugged, pulled. But when she finally pried it open, she froze. Inside, she found nothing but expired bills and old letters. Her shoulders slumped. She muttered something under her breath and slammed it shut. I smiled into my pillow. She had taken the bait. From then on I knew. She suspected the safe, but she didn't know the truth. And as long as she kept searching, she would only reveal herself further. Still, she was dangerous. And her desperation was growing. 2 weeks later, Daniel came home with documents in his hand. "Mama," he said, "Angela and I have been talking. We think you should sign some papers just to make things easier. Power of attorney. That way we can handle things for you if anything ever happens." My chest tightened. There it was, her next move. Fraud disguised as care. I looked at Daniel, then at Angela, who stood behind him, smiling sweetly. And I knew right then, the war had begun. If your own child brought you papers to sign, papers you knew were a trap, what would you do? Refuse and risk a fight, or sign and plan your revenge in silence? Comment your thoughts and don't forget to subscribe. In the next chapter, I'll tell you what I did with those papers, and how Angela's mask finally began to crack. The moment Daniel held out those papers, I felt the ground shift beneath me. "Just sign, Mama," he said softly, his tone rehearsed, almost pleading. "It's only so we can handle things for you if, God forbid, something happens." Behind him, Angela stood with her arms crossed. Her lips pressed into that perfect little smile she wore when she thought she'd already won. I stared at the papers in his hand. Power of attorney. The words screamed at me. Louder than the fire had the night it tried to swallow me whole. If I signed, I would be handing them everything. My house, my pension, my savings, my life. It would be like striking the match myself and watching everything burn. I took a deep breath, forcing my voice steady. "Daniel, do you know what you're asking me to do?" He looked down, avoiding my eyes. "Angela said it's common. Lots of families do this. It just makes things easier," Angela said. Those 2 words were knives. My son, my blood, couldn't even see the strings being pulled. I turned to her. "And easier for who, Angela? For me or for you?" Her smile faltered for a fraction of a second. Just a fraction, but I caught it. Daniel bristled. "Mama, please don't start." Start. That was the word he used whenever he didn't want to see the truth. I pushed the papers back toward him. "I won't sign." Silence filled the room. Daniel's face tightened, disappointment clouding his eyes. Angela's jaw clenched, her smile vanishing completely. Finally she spoke. Her voice was syrupy sweet, but her eyes glittered like glass. "Of course, Mama. Take your time. We only want what's best for you." But I heard the threat in her tone. I saw the way her hand tightened on Daniel's arm, her nails digging into him as if to remind him of his loyalty. That night, I locked my bedroom door and slid the dresser against it. I knew refusal wouldn't be the end. It would only push her to try harder. And I needed to be ready. So I began writing everything down. Every strange incident. Every whispered word. Every attempt she made to paint me as forgetful or weak. I kept a notebook hidden beneath my mattress, documenting it all. If the fire hadn't convinced people, maybe paper would. But the enemy was clever. The very next week I noticed something terrifying. My medications, blood pressure pills I had taken faithfully for years, were tampered with. The capsules looked wrong, lighter, some empty. My hands shook as I held the bottle. Angela was trying again. I threw them away immediately and made an appointment with my doctor to get replacements. But I didn't tell Daniel. Couldn't. He was too far gone into her spell. Instead, I told Harris, my neighbor. When he heard, his face darkened. "Evelyn, this isn't just cruelty anymore. This is attempted murder. You need to go to the police." But I shook my head. "Without proof, they'll say it's age or paranoia. She knows how to play innocent. I need her to reveal herself." And that became my new mission. Not just survival. Exposure. The opportunity came sooner than I expected. One Friday evening, Daniel announced he'd be working late. Angela and I were alone again. She made dinner, pasta, garlic bread, salad, and set a plate in front of me. Her smile was wide, her eyes sharp. "Eat, Mama," she urged. "You need your strength." I stared at the food. My stomach growled, but my instincts screamed. Instead of eating, I excused myself and carried the plate to my room. I pretended to take a few bites, leaving crumbs and a mess on the plate. But when she wasn't looking, I slipped the food into a plastic bag, sealed it tight, and hid it under my bed. The next morning, I carried it to Mr. Harris. "Do you know anyone who can test this?" "Yes." He nodded gravely. "Leave it with me." Days later, he returned with news that made my blood run cold. "Traces of rat poison, Evelyn. In the pasta." I closed my eyes, gripping the arms of my chair. Rat poison. She was escalating. "What do I do now?" I whispered. Harris leaned forward. "You hold this. You guard it. And when the time comes, you use it. Angela's mask is cracking. It's only a matter of time before she slips." He was right. Because that very evening she finally broke. Daniel and I were watching television in the living room when Angela walked in. Her face pale, her eyes wide. She looked straight at me and blurted, "What did you do with the papers?" Daniel frowned. "Angela." But she cut him off, her voice rising. "Don't play dumb, Evelyn. I know you took them to someone. I saw you sneaking out. Where are they?" The room went silent. Daniel stared at her in shock. I simply folded my hands in my lap and smiled. "Which papers are you talking about, Angela?" Her face twisted with rage. Her mask, so carefully built, cracked before my eyes. Daniel jumped up. "Angela, what's going on?" But she didn't answer. She just glared at me, breathing hard, as though she wanted to lunge across the room. In that moment I knew. The fire hadn't broken me. The poison hadn't silenced me. And the papers she wanted so badly were going to destroy her. But Angela wasn't finished. Not yet. Because later that night, I woke to the sound of footsteps outside my door, and the slow, deliberate click of a lock turning. Imagine you caught your enemy cracking under pressure. Would you strike then, or wait for them to destroy themselves fully? Share your answer in the comments, and subscribe so you don't miss what happens in the next chapter. Because when I heard that lock turn, I knew Angela's next move would be her boldest yet. The click of the lock in the dead of night sent a chill racing down my spine. My breath caught, my ears straining. Someone was at my door. Slowly, deliberately, the handle turned. I held my breath, my body frozen beneath the blanket. The room was silent, except for the faint creak of the floorboards. Then darkness shifted. The door eased open, and Angela's silhouette slipped inside. She thought I was asleep. She moved carefully, her steps soft, but I heard everyone. In her hand, faintly glinting in the moonlight, was a bottle. She crouched near my bedside table, unscrewing the cap, and began pouring something into the water glass I kept there. "Poison." Again. My heart hammered, but I kept my eyes closed, my breathing steady, feigning sleep. She lingered for a moment, watching me. Then, satisfied, she tiptoed back out, closing the door behind her with a soft click. I waited until her footsteps faded before I sat up, trembling. My throat was dry, my lips cracked, but I didn't touch the glass. I wrapped it carefully in a towel and slid it beneath my mattress with the other evidence. The next morning, Angela was waiting at the table. She smiled sweetly as I shuffled in, feigning weakness. "Good morning, Mama Evelyn. Did you sleep well?" I met her eyes. "Well enough." She glanced toward my room, her smile sharpening. "Did you drink your water?" The audacity of her question nearly made me laugh. "Not yet," I replied, keeping my voice calm. Daniel joined us then, yawning. Angela moved quickly, fussing over him, setting his breakfast before him like the perfect wife. I sat in silence, my heart pounding with the weight of the evidence building in my room. But even with proof, I knew the world could turn on me. Without timing, without precision, I could lose everything. That afternoon, I slipped out again to see Mr. Harris. I handed him the wrapped glass, my hands shaking. "She tried again," I whispered. He stared at me, his jaw tightening. "Evelyn, this has gone too far. You can't keep waiting. She'll kill you if you give her the chance." I shook my head. "Not yet. Let her believe I'm weak. Let her dig her grave with her own hands." Because that's what she was doing. Each attempt, each slip, each crack in her mask, it was piling up. And when the moment came, I would unleash it all. That evening, Daniel confronted me again. He sat at my bedside, looking tired, worn, older than his years. "Mama," he said softly, "Angela's trying. She wants peace with you. Why do you keep fighting her?" I looked at my son, my chest heavy. He was blind, so blind to the woman beside him. But I couldn't hate him. Love doesn't vanish, even when it breaks you. "Daniel," I said gently, "one day the truth will burn through her lies. And when it does, I hope you're strong enough to see it." He frowned, confused, but said nothing. That night the house was eerily quiet. Too quiet. I lay awake listening, waiting. Hours passed. Then I heard it, the faint creak of the floorboards outside my door again. My heart seized. This time I didn't pretend to sleep. I grabbed my walking stick and positioned myself near the door. When it opened and Angela's figure slipped inside, I raised my voice. "What are you doing here?" She froze, the bottle still in her hand. For the first time, real fear flashed across her face. I heard a noise," she stammered. I stepped forward, my voice stronger than I felt. "Then why are you holding that?" Her eyes darted to the bottle. For a moment she couldn't speak. Then she turned and fled, slamming the door behind her. The next morning she was all smiles again, as though nothing had happened. Daniel noticed nothing. But I knew. And so did she. The war was no longer hidden. It was open. Days later, Harris returned with confirmation. The water had been poisoned. Real evidence. Solid. My hands trembled as I held the test results, but my heart surged with resolve. Now I had the deed, had the savings, and I had proof of her attempt on my life. But Angela was unraveling faster than I expected. The more desperate she became, the sloppier her moves. And desperation is dangerous. Because the very next week, she made a mistake so big, so reckless, it would change everything. She didn't know I was watching from the window that evening. Hidden behind the curtains. She thought I was resting. She thought I was fragile. But I saw her in the backyard, digging furiously near the old oak tree, her hands covered in dirt. She placed a box into the hole and buried it quickly, looking around with frantic eyes. Box. What was inside? What was she hiding now? If you caught your enemy burying something in secret, would you dig it up immediately, or wait to catch them in the act again? Comment your answer and don't forget to subscribe. In the next chapter, I'll tell you what I found in that buried box, and how it revealed the darkest truth of all. That night, sleep did not come to me. I lay in bed with my eyes wide open, the image of Angela in the yard replaying again and again. The way her hands clawed at the dirt. The frantic look on her face. The small box she shoved into the earth, as though hiding something too dangerous for anyone else to see. What could it be? Money she had stolen? Papers she didn't want me to find? Or something darker? My heart pounded as I waited for the house to fall silent. When I was sure Daniel and Angela were asleep, I rose from bed, wrapped a shawl around my shoulders and slipped outside. The night air was cool, the grass damp beneath my feet. I crept toward the oak tree, the moon casting long shadows across the yard. My knees ached as I knelt and began digging with my hands, clawing at the soil. The earth was loose from her work, easy to move. Within minutes, my fingers scraped against the edge of the box. It was small metal, heavy. I pulled it out, my breath quickening, and carried it back to my room. With trembling hands, I pried it open. What I saw inside made me gasp. Stacks of cash. Wads of $100 bills. Thick rubber bands around them. More money than Angela could ever explain. And beneath the cash, documents, insurance papers, my name. My eyes widened as I read. A life insurance policy recently taken out, with a payout of $500,000. Beneficiary: Daniel's wife, Angela. My stomach turned. A fire. Poison. Papers. It all made sense now. She wasn't just trying to push me out. She was trying to kill me for money. I pressed my hand over my mouth, fighting the urge to scream. My son's wife had taken out insurance on me, betting on my death as her future fortune. Tears burned my eyes, but I swallowed them down. I had cried enough. Now I had proof, real, undeniable proof. The question was what to do with it. I could go to the police immediately, yes. But I also knew how charming Angela was, how quickly she spun lies. She would cry, claim it was all for my care, and Daniel would believe her. I couldn't risk it, not without laying the trap fully. So I closed the box, slid it beneath my shawl, and hid it in the back of my wardrobe. Then I returned to bed, my mind racing. The next morning Angela was different. Her smile was too wide, her voice too sweet. "How did you sleep, Mama Evelyn?" she asked, her eyes studying me carefully. I forced a weak smile. "Like a baby." But inside I knew she suspected. She knew I had seen her bury something. And I knew she would check the box soon. The day passed with a tension so thick you could cut it with a knife. Every time she looked at me, her eyes narrowed slightly, as though calculating. That evening, when Daniel went to the store, she cornered me in the kitchen. Her hands trembled slightly as she gripped the counter. "You know," she whispered, her smile thin, "some people don't know when to let go. Some people cling too tightly to things they can't keep forever." I met her gaze, steady. "And some people dig holes so deep, they bury themselves in them." For a moment her mask cracked. Her face twisted, rage flashing in her eyes. Then Daniel returned, and she straightened quickly, plastering on her sweet smile. But that night I heard her in the yard again, digging, searching. And when she didn't find the box, her scream echoed through the darkness like a wild animal's cry. I lay in bed, clutching the box hidden in my wardrobe, my heart pounding. She knew. She knew I had taken it. The next morning, the house was a battlefield of silence. She barely looked at me, her jaw clenched, her eyes sharp as knives. Daniel sensed the tension but said nothing. He was caught between us, blind to the war happening under his roof. I knew then. The time for silence was ending. The time for exposure was near. I called Mr. Cole, the lawyer, and told him everything. He listened quietly, then said, "Evelyn, you hold every card now. Bring me the box. We'll take this to the authorities. But be careful. If she knows you have it, she might try again." Try again. The thought made my skin crawl. Because as night fell, I noticed Angela watching me more closely than ever. Her eyes followed me with a hunger, a desperation. And I realized she wouldn't wait much longer. She was going to make her boldest move. That night, as I lay in bed, I heard the floor creak again. The lock click. The door inch open. But this time I wasn't unprepared. I sat upright, clutching the box to my chest. And when the door swung wide, Angela stood there in the dark, her eyes burning with fury. "You have something that belongs to me," she hissed. I tightened my grip on the box. "No, Angela. I have something that will end you." Her face twisted, and she stepped into the room. For the first time there was no smile, no mask. Only raw hatred. And that was the moment Daniel's voice echoed from the hallway. "Angela, what are you doing in Mama's room? If you caught your daughter-in-law sneaking into your room in the dead of night, and your child walked in at the very moment of confrontation, what would you do? Expose her immediately or hold back for the right strike? Comment your thoughts and subscribe, because in the final chapter, everything will explode, and Angela will face the truth she never thought would come to light. "Angela, what are you doing in Mama's room?" Daniel's voice cut through the thick tension like a blade. Angela froze in the doorway, her eyes wide, caught between fury and panic. Her hand twitched at her side as though she wanted to lunge at me, But instead she pasted that all-too-familiar smile across her lips. "Oh, Daniel," she said, her voice shaking. "I heard a noise. I thought Mama wasn't feeling well. I came to check on her." I sat up straighter, the metal box clutched tightly to my chest. "She's lying, Daniel." My voice was strong, firm, clear. Angela turned to me, feigning shock. "Mama Evelyn, please don't start again. You've been confused lately. You." "Enough." My voice boomed through the room, stronger than I thought possible. Daniel blinked, stunned. "I have been silent long enough. And tonight it ends." I held the box high, my hands trembling but steady with purpose. "Do you want to know what your wife was burying in the backyard, Daniel? Do you want to know what I found?" Daniel frowned, confused. "What are you talking about?" I opened the box slowly, deliberately. The cash gleamed in the light, stacks upon stacks, undeniable. Beneath it, the insurance papers. I pulled them out, my fingers shaking, and thrust them toward my son. "Read." Daniel hesitated, his eyes darting between me and Angela. Finally, he took the papers and began scanning them. With each line his face grew paler, his hands trembling. When his eyes reached the section marked beneficiary, Angela, he froze. He looked up, his face ashen. "Angela, what is this?" Angela's mask shattered. She lunged forward, grabbing the papers, her voice rising. "It's not what it looks like. I did it for us, Daniel, for our future. If something happened to her, we would be secure. If something happened to me," I snapped, my voice sharp. "You mean if you made something happen?" The words hung heavy in the air. Daniel staggered back, his mouth opening and closing. He looked at Angela, then at me. "Tell me she's lying, Angela. Tell me this isn't true." Angela's eyes darted wildly, her chest heaving. "Daniel, listen to me." But I wasn't finished. I reached beneath the blanket and pulled out the test results Harris had given me. I shoved them into Daniel's trembling hands. "Rat poison," I said coldly. "In the food she served me. And this," I gestured toward the water glass evidence tucked beside me, "was poison too. She tried to kill me, Daniel. Your wife, the woman you swore to protect, tried to burn me alive, poison me, and bury her lies. And if not for Harris, I would be dead already." Daniel's knees buckled. He dropped into the chair, his face buried in his hands. Angela reached for him, but he pulled away sharply. "Daniel," she cried. "Don't listen to her, she's manipulating you." "No, Angela," I said softly, my voice steady. "That's your game. But it ends now." At that moment, Harris appeared in the doorway, his phone in his hand. "The police are on their way, Evelyn." Angela spun toward him, her face contorted with rage. "Ooh. You've been spying on me." "Protecting her," Harris said firmly. "Someone had to." The sound of sirens grew in the distance. Angela's chest heaved as she looked from me to Daniel to the box of cash, her lies collapsing around her like the fire she had set weeks before. When the officers entered the room minutes later, she broke. She screamed, fought, clawed, but the evidence was overwhelming. The insurance papers, the poisoned food, testimony, and finally, Daniel's silence, his refusal to defend her anymore. They dragged her out in handcuffs, her screams echoing through the house. "You'll regret this, Evelyn. You'll regret this." But I didn't. Not for a second. Daniel collapsed beside me, tears streaming down his face. "Mama. Sorry. I didn't see it. I didn't want to believe it." I placed a trembling hand on his cheek. "Love makes us blind, son. But blindness can be cured when truth finally burns through the lies." For the first time in months, I felt peace wash over me. I had survived the fire, the poison, the whispers, the betrayal. I had survived Angela. The next weeks were hard. Daniel moved through the house like a ghost, ashamed, broken. But I forgave him. Because forgiveness, I learned, isn't for the one who hurt you. It's for the one who survived. I rebuilt my room little by little. The smell of smoke lingered for a while, But it no longer haunted me. It reminded me instead of strength. Fire had tried to consume me, but it had revealed the truth. And in the end, the hidden safe had lived up to its name. It had saved me, not just with money or papers but with proof. Proof that lies can burn, but truth always survives the flames. Life lesson. Evil doesn't always come from strangers. Sometimes it comes from the ones who smile across the table, the ones you trust most. But silence is not weakness, and age is not helplessness. When you guard your dignity, your truth, and your faith, no fire can destroy you. If this story moved you, tell me, what would you have done if you were in my shoes? Would you forgive or would you never look back? Comment below, share your thoughts, and don't forget to subscribe. Because stories like mine remind us that even in the darkest nights, quiet strength can turn the tide.